Good day and good evening, and welcome to Palace of the Dead with me, Caetsu Chaiji, but you can just call me Kai. Last week, we reached we've reached and completed floor 100, and this week we'll continue that exact run. Some people in the chat I already saw were like, what happens if you die on, like, I don't know, floor 102? Does the stream end? No. We'll be going for like 3 hours, maybe a bit more. But not 4 hours. I have something to do an hour after raid, an hour after stream, which is raid, so we can't go super overtime. But we'll go about 3 hours in a bit, maybe. And then we'll see how far we are. Whether we manage to get further or we died and then we just go back. And then we're like, all right, we'll continue from last week. Well, you were past floor 101. Why are we starting on floor 40 now? Well, we died. And that's basically how it's going to go. With that said, hey Steve, hey Chris, hey Tristan, hey FFXIV, hey MPC, hey Menely, hey Ceres, hey Kazadragoon, hey Liv, hey Brontom, hey Fatman, hey Ham, hey Faye Nom Nom Nom. Wait, Nom 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 Nom. Nom Nom Nom. Faye Nom Nom Nom. Hope you're all doing very well, and thank you so much, Faye. Chloe can... I think Chloe can ask you to do Deep Dungeons or pick up your book. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. I actually have this book from last week. And last week, I forgot to, like, use my second chances, so I just didn't finish. Like, I remembered, like, after the stream, like, wait a minute. Ah! Hey Vivi, thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. Let's see if I keep remembering it though. Will we get to see you fill this book today? Probably not. Probably not. Purity. Well, we found the exit. What? Just the bros walking side by side as the patrol. Hey Philippe and Aradil, hope you're doing well. Whee! Serenity. They're just giving us all the cure Palmanders in case we're lacking any. Just in case. Wait. Huh? Oh, witching. It is pretty funny, Philippe. I think it was not yesterday, but the night before that, I believe. Viek, I think, sent me the classic Facebook meme one. You know, the one with the 6 divided by 2 parentheses 1 plus 2. We talked a little bit about it, and it turned out that... Oh, whoops, the exit is open. It turned out that back in the day, the division symbol used in that meme actually means everything on the left divided by everything on the right. Which means that back in the day, that division symbol specifically implied a parentheses between like around both sides. It just doesn't anymore, which leads to those misunderstandings that this meme is so popular for. And thank you for the tip, Velas. That is good to know. Hey Oats, thank you so much. I hope you're having a good day as well. That is also the reason why when VX sent it to me, my immediate reaction as a mathematician was it's intentionally misleading. The people that made the meme intentionally used it like that without adding the necessary parentheses, which makes it difficult to say what the answer is. Like, it's intentionally missing a parentheses. That's the problem. Which gives two possible answers depending on, well, how you interpret it, I suppose. Hey, Jim. Thank you so much. Oh, that sucks. And the worst, just getting sniped by Final Sting from off-screen. You're just having a good time in Palace of the Dead, and then you just see the bee come in from the side, like, I'm gonna ruin this man's whole career. Vulnerability? Hey, Green. Hope you're doing well. And hey, Caligula. I hope you're doing well as well. Well, I hope you're doing well. You're just talking about me with a friend. What's good is hopefully we'll get far in Palace of the Dead. That's what's good. I may have had a number of mobs on me. I'm a warrior, it's all I know. Hey, Agent Monica. Hope you're doing well. What is the biggest thing you're looking forward to that was announced in the live letter? Oh boy. Oh, whoops. I had the reaction of, like, you're just hanging out in your home, and then you see a giant spider. Kill it with fire! It died. Shockingly, it died. Uh-oh. Give me a pot shirt. Oh. Oh. Oh, hi. Ow. It is pretty funny. And yeah, that sounds about right, Velas. I learned that lesson in a... years ago, I was trying to, like, just beat Palace of the Dead with a friend. Like, as a duo, just the two of us, because we didn't, like, have anyone else that wanted to go with us. So we just tried to do it as two. And one of our runs were ended on, like, I think, like, floor 11. That's when we learned that the slimes explode. And that's when we learned to, you know, respect mobs that we're fighting. Oh, that's a silver chest. Hey, Bimo. Hope you're doing well. Maybe I haven't encountered any of the zombie NPCs yet. Don't know if I have in this run. But I probably have. Yeah, that is a classic, the exploding slime. I'm pretty sure that if we hadn't gotten our nose booped from that, we would eventually had someone die from Final Sting. Hey, Radia. Nope, you're doing well. So Brontom's question, that is a hard one. Weirdly, I was extremely excited to see that they're actually looking into updating and adding some, you know, more tutorial stuff to the game. And I'm pretty confident that there's not a lot of players that are excited about that. But I am. Do you think the tutorial should be mandatory? No. The reason for it makes perfect sense why I don't think that. Because if you make a tutorial mandatory, that doesn't make people listen. It doesn't make people listen. It just makes people say, that's annoying. And it'll just make people figure out an efficient way to beat it faster, not make them listen. So I don't know if it would actually help to make it mandatory. I think they could make it more obvious that it is there, because the only thing that the tutorial actually does is, like, shortly before you reach Tasha, they have a quest, have you talk with the smith. You know, the tutorial guy. They don't have you, like, they could have made it so that the first step of the tutorial is part of the MSQ or something. And then as you move on, they have it, like, very clearly portrayed that if you finish this tutorial, you get a brand new ring. Which is actually really, really good. Like, that's like, a lot of people circle back around to do the tutorial because, oh, I want that ring. So if they just did that, they wouldn't have to make it mandatory. People would do it, but again, they would probably do it in the fastest way possible to get the reward. What are you looking forward to the most in this expansion series? I don't know. I don't know. I'm sort of just seeing things as they come. Like, I think the field operation is going to be interesting. Possibly. But yeah, it is interesting because on the one hand, you could say, well, if they don't make the tutorial front and center and not force it, then you could argue that they are not teaching the players how to play the game. On the other hand, they show the tutorial to you, they show it's there. The problem right now, like on live of Final Fantasy XIV, is that the tutorial is incredibly outdated. Which means it teaches you things that you can't use. There's also things where the tutorial doesn't actually test your knowledge. And that I have a whole video on this. About like how the tutorials in Final Fantasy XIV sucks. The problem is that, like, go ahead. If you have a tank, you have a warrior paladin, go and do the tutorial on AoE enmity. I challenge you to do it without your tank stance and with only fast blade or heavy swing. You might think, oh, that sounds a little hard. It's not. It's not. It's not hard. It's actually easy. Which means, what I'm getting at is the tutorial, like, just spews text at you for a few minutes, and then they hope you read it. If you didn't, then they don't actually check whether you learned anything. Like, they don't actually, like, the test in the tutorial doesn't actually test you. So, because of that, you can take the tutorial, say you did it, and still have no idea what you're doing. Which makes the tutorial a failure in my eyes. Hey Zaf, hope you're doing well. So like, that's something that I would like to see. But like, the weird thing is they know how to make tutorials that work. It's possible the enmity one there that I'm talking about has been power crept. That there was a time where it was actually not possible to beat it with just heavy swing or fast blade. But that still implies that it is outdated. And what I mean when I say they actually know how to make tests is the combo tutorial for tanks and only tanks actually will fail you and put you back at the start of the tutorial if you fail the combo like 3 or 4 times. Like, they actually reset your counter and send you back to the start and have the NPC talk at you again to explain to you again what the problem is. So they know how to do it. And according to the tutorial stuff we saw in the live letter, they have like spread markers where if you actually don't respect them, you will fail. And things like that. Which I think is a good thing. But yeah, the tutorial, it's not a bad idea if they incentivize it, as FFXIV says. It's not a, like, that's not a bad idea. But if you make it mandatory, then players will just look for ways to, like, get past it. Like, it becomes a challenge to pass, not to learn. Which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do. Yeah, in regards to what the thing I'm looking forward to the most in the expansion, I don't know. The thing is, the kind of content that I do, like play mostly, is like, you know, just the content that come at us. I sort of know the exact patch cycle, so that it's just a case of eventually it comes. Hey, Ymir, hope you're doing well. What would be a worthwhile reward? Good question. Do you get a haircut? Nope. Almost rather the opposite. I'm just starting to have so much hair that it looks a lot more clear when that like my hair just looks different sometimes. Hey Gleaming, hope you're doing well. Obviously you're the most excited for Hildebrand. Well, I like Hildebrand, so I don't mind that. People have issues with dealing with Ritterton, so gear that could deal with him would help. That is an interesting point, Farak. On the other hand, if they actually did the tutorial there, they would probably not need the gear anymore. Do you think? Wouldn't that be ironic? Yeah, that's how you get them. Yeah, that is true. If you actually learn how to play the game from the tutorials, then you don't need the brand new ring. But it's nice to have it. And you already have your job gear when you reach Ritterton. Your job gear is actually kind of outdated when you reach Ritterton. But you also have garbage accessories because A Realm Reborn. So they could just have the tutorial give you, like, good accessories. Are we talking about? We're talking about the tutorials of Final Fantasy XIV, Ymir. And how they're not super great, but the live letter teased that they're adding tutorials for some boss mechanics and stuff. A worthwhile reward would be a title. I feel like that doesn't quite match with the target audience. Like a new player learning the game probably does not care very much about a title. Hey, they might even not even know how to apply a title. They could add a tutorial on that. But the biggest weakness of the tutorials in Final Fantasy XIV is that, for the most part, they're all text. Like that's genuinely my biggest criticism, is that it's just, oops, all text for the most part. And others I really need to test the New Cape Westwind. Oh, you could use New Game Plus for it. What? Why is there so much gloom here? Why is it so gloomy? Such gloominess. Make it unlock flying in A Realm Reborn. Wow. The tutorial should be voiced. I mean, the thing is, I will take either, like, voiced would be good. That's already a good start. But I would also take tests, like the tutorial actually tests that you understood what they told you. Like, that's good enough. Like, if the test actually explains to you, but just in text, what you're supposed to do. And then there is a, like an actual test that cannot be beaten unless you do exactly what they said. And it should be Kai's voice. Hey, ScreenX, call me. I'd do it. Yeah. But like I think the most effective kind of tutorial would be one where the actual test in relation to the tutorial is actually like unbeatable unless you do what they said. Because then it means there's a 100% chance, at least close to 100% chance, that you learned it. And when I say close to, it's because let's not kid ourselves. There is always the possibility that someone, like, randomly manages to do the thing that they had to do by random chance without understanding it. Like, there's always the chance. Like, I mean, my brother and I completed most of Final Fantasy VII without understanding English. So, you know, there's a chance that you can randomly guess correctly enough times. I'll teach your brother English. Well, that's, like, over 2 decades ago, Sip. So, a bit late. It'd be nice if Medica worked in... Oh, yeah, that is a weird one. They're not in your party, so it doesn't work. You know what's even weird about that, Caligulov, is that that kind of tutorial and those experiences in solo duties for the first many levels will teach you, as a new player, that you cannot use AoE healing on NPCs. But I think about Shadowbringers, like, is somewhere around there. They managed to fix that. So now, so at that point, your AoE healing works. Which makes it, again, even weirder, because it really dates the game that, oh yeah, this part is old, so there things don't work. And then later in the game, things that should have worked from the start working. But they didn't work initially. And they haven't gone back to fix it, which is also not good, not optimal. And yeah, speaking of levels there, Bimo, it gets even more confusing when you realize that I'm pretty sure AoE healing works in the level 70 Sage starter quest. Like the tutorial for Sage. How's the palace going? Well, I mean, we're almost at 110. And I'm on a floor with plenty of treasures that I have too much of. And I can't use items. So that's fun. You know, Zav, I'm reasonably confident that that red mage intentionally chose their place there. Thank you, Necrofits. I hope so too. How does Picto feel for soloing? In Palace of the Dead, Pictomancer is in some ways really strong, but in other ways it is incredibly weak. If you compare it to like the top dogs of Palace of the Dead, you know, like Machinist. Machinist has decent burst, like really good burst, and an interrupt, and a slow, and a bind, and like a speed boost they can just run around with, and a heal. Pictomancer has an incredible burst. And a barrier. They also have a sleep, but that rarely works. Is it possible with any class? Yes. It is possible to solo Palace of the Dead with any job. It has even been done with Black Mage over the years. It has been done. And simply because it has been done, it means that it can be done, of course. It's been done by very competent players. Yeah. But they like, the question wasn't do you think it can be done by anyone? The question was, can it be done? But yeah, that is true. Doesn't mean that it is easy, but it can be done. Yeah, that one is pretty funny, Liv. Because I have had situations where people have, they've not outright said it, but they've sort of like, in what they did say, sort of implied that their understanding of when I say, did you know that warrior can solo so-and-so, that it's easy. And it's not. Like, some content is easy to solo by a warrior, but not all content. And there's also the additional part that sometimes warrior just does it more easily than other jobs. Doesn't mean that it's easy for the warrior, it just means that it's really hard for the other jobs. Ta-da! Remember to help guy with the Poma and does of likes? Thank you, Ardell. That's a pretty good one. But yeah, that is a classic, is can it be done equals it's easy level, which is not true. I'm pretty sure that the hardest job to solo Palace of the Dead, just specifically Palace of the Dead with, is probably Black Mage. Because as you get up to the very high floors, you can't stand and cast Fire 4. That's not a good idea, which also is the reason why I have a feeling that this is going to get really hard at some point. Like, last time, like from floor 40 to like floor 90 or so, maybe even past 90, I just walked up to mobs and said, "You're already dead," and then they just imploded on themselves. So Pictomancer is insanely strong in like the first 100 floors, but that's because, like, if you compare it to jobs like Machinist, honestly, any ranged physical job or any tank who has more utility than Pictomancer, then the only thing that Pictomancer has that makes it stand out from the crowd is it has more burst damage than basically all of them. Like, I'm reasonably confident that Pictomancer has the greatest burst at that level, and it's not even close. Because of, well, I mean, they get this trait. You run up to something, 2000 potency instantaneously. Very balanced. Did you know it's possible for an Astrologian to solo Palace of the Dead Synced? Well, yeah. It doesn't surprise me, actually, that Astrologian would also be down there with Black Mage. I just sort of assumed that Black Mage would be harder, because Black Mage has, like... Exactly, Raylia. Astrologian has 2 light speeds and a shorter cooldown on light speed as well. And back when people figured out that you can solo with Astrologian, like back when people really did that, it didn't have that, so it's probably easier now. So like when you're comparing Astrologian and Black Mage gets to cast like they get Umbral Soul, which is reasonably convenient, right? They can just use Umbral Soul, like they just Blizzard 3 the first thing they see, Umbral Soul, now their ice mode is frozen. And then they can just run around forever, just spamming Scathe, and like until their MP bar is empty, and then they just like reload by using Umbral Soul back to full, more Scathe. And they can also use Transpose to access Thunder. So like, since Black Mage was hard, they've also gotten something else. So Black Mage might not be as hard, Astrologian might not be as hard, but comparing those 2 jobs, Black Mage's run and gun rotation is like an average of 120 potency. Yes, you have Enochian at like 5%. Yes, you have Fire 4 and things like that. But Astrologian has like a similarly powered attack, and they have a better, like they have a dot as well. Thunder's also a dot to have. But they also have heals, like a lot of heals. So I would just see it as Astrologian might be stronger. Possibly. By like, not much. Like, again, it's not, well, Astrologian can do it more easily than Black Mage, so Black Mage in the dumpster, Astrologian is king. Nah, it's just, we're comparing 2 mega bad jobs. At Palace of the Dead, who, like, to say which one is better. No matter how good a class is at clearing floors, it's gotta kill Behemoth. That's true, Bondi. And if you compare Black Mage and Astrologian, Black Mage has the capacity to burst harder, like a lot harder. Astrologian probably has the capacity to heal up after multiple of the meteors. So like, one has the capacity to make more out of the time they get, the other has the capacity to get more time. Local lizard barges in important, get more and ruins, paints everything in blue and red, hundreds of casualties. Sometimes there's also a little bit of green. I'm gonna go to 200? Probably not tonight, Emir. I can't, like, genuinely, Emil, I can't make it tonight. I am sure about that. There's also the part that last time we got to floor 100 because most of the floors are really, really fast to do. This time the floors take a little bit longer. You can go till 2 AM. I can't because, as Sip said, we have planned some off-stream Savage reclears a little bit after the stream. Out of interest, when they add the next variant dungeons, since they seem to be using them to revisit old areas, where would you like it to be? Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. And also, Emia, because this is like a weekday, it would probably mean that you would miss it. If I went all the way to 2 AM, wouldn't you? I don't have to sleep. Well, I believe you want to sleep, right? Sip, what is that nonsense you're saying? Actually, Pictomancer turned out to be incredibly good at the floor 100 boss. We, like, during the fight, I discovered that, like, the ads, you can just AoE them. Like, you just hold your living muse and you just throw that when, like, when they come up, and it'll just die off. Easy peasy. Ha! And that makes a lot more sense, Tristan. What? We are the two gigantoads. It's always funny when there's a patrol mob and there's just two of them on the exact same path. Brontom says, I mean, Picto has to be if you just casually go to 100 first time. Well, I mean, my first go at soloing Palace of the Dead ever was, like, actually serious go that got past, like, floor 30 or so, was as summoner. And that was technically first try. And that was on stream a few years ago. And we wiped, like, a few floors before Behemoth, if I recall correctly. So a big part of it is knowing what you're doing. Puddingway would love these floors. Oh, yes. Although he might not like that the pudding bites back. Yeah, the thing is, the hard part about getting to floor 100 right now nowadays, to add to what Velas is saying, is more like understanding the basics. of Palace of the Dead, and what you need to respect and what you don't need to respect in Palace of the Dead. Like, you can very easily die on an early floor if you don't understand that, oh, this mob needs to be respected in this specific way on so-and-so floor. And if you don't know to, like, you know, like, walk on the edge of rooms and things like that. So you end up stepping in way more traps than you'd like, and things like that. Like, there's a bunch of things that can make it easier if you understand what you're dealing with. But ultimately, I believe it's generally agreed upon that Palace of the Dead, oh hi, the hard part is like after floor 150 or so. Uh-oh. Since when did that stun? It didn't stun me earlier. It stuns if you're not looking at it. Oh. How weird. It has ended a run for me before. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, Farrak. Did you see that? It almost ended mine. Yeah, exactly, Velas. This was like, I briefly explained this, I believe on Discord, that the annoying part, the thing that makes deep dungeon soloing so tedious, is that it is like, imagine a savage boss. Sure, a savage boss. The fight is 45 minutes. But the hard part starts at like minute 30 or 35 or something like that. Everything before that is like sort of normal difficulty, but hard enough that if you don't pay attention, you wipe. Alright, Emir, enjoy your evening. And such a boss would also be incredibly tedious and annoying. Because every time you failed, you would be like, oh, now I have to go through all of that again? That's the big problem with Palace of the Dead. That's also why I've said before that I probably wouldn't bother doing a run like this alone, like on my own. Because it would be too boring and lonely. And I would be so annoyed if I wiped after so much time. Agdistis was apparently extremely backloaded on the actually hard mechanics. That's fair, look at the Majid, but I'm pretty sure Agdistis was still like 10 minutes. Because like that's approximately the your average savage boss. I also remember personally, if we go even further back, that I found it incredibly frustrating that E6S Fura, that's Ifrit and Garuda, has a mechanic like 6 minutes into the fight where if a single person moves wrong in like a 30 seconds to 40 seconds mechanic, wipe, instant wipe. And like that's the kind of mechanic that I think would make more sense to either have at the start of the fight, or at the very least have an easier version of it at the start of the fight. So you have you know, a chance to get acquainted with the mechanic. Because, like, the specific problem with that mechanic is that it is like nothing else in the fight. Like, nothing else in the fight prepares you for that. And it's just a sequence where one mistake wipes you. And then you're just sent back, like, 5 or 6 minutes because someone didn't know. And then you have to, like, go through 5 or 6 minutes again. Like, it's hard to explain. But it's like, you could take, like, a Souls-like or a platformer, what have you, and just imagine you have to do this really hard bit, but every time you fail, there's a, like, it's just a 10-second section or something, but you have to get it perfect, and every time you fail, you have to run it back for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you get one try. One. And then you have to run it back for 5 to 6 minutes. Or however long it takes. And if it just let you keep trying from the very start, then, like, if you could just respawned right there, then it wouldn't be hard. But because the game forces you to have 5+ minutes between your attempts, it's really hard to learn because, like, you have to get back into the swing of things on each attempt. It's also part of the reason why when we've been practicing M4S on stream, that you see that we've wiped a lot on one of the first mechanics. Even if we kinda nailed it and we could probably proc past it, we just wipe it anyway. Because the mechanic is too hard to not practice like that. Like, that is an example of they actually put the respawn point right next to the mechanic. Like, the hard part is right there. That's a big boy. Wow. Imagine if Alarm Pheromones 1 was after 3rd beat. Yeah, imagine that, actually, Han. Imagine if Alarm Pheromones was so late in the fight that it is the last mechanic that you cannot skip. Like, it's so late that you're guaranteed to see it, but it's early enough that even if you pump it as much as you can, in full bis, you still won't skip it. Man, that would be brutal. Although, on the other hand, then you might also just have, like, done enough damage that it's okay if half the raid dies. But still. I have to remember to use potions on this floor because the outer region is disabled. Alarm 1 second to last mechanic and it's followed by body check. Yeah, exactly. Something like that would be cruel. Like, straight up just cruel and evil. And that's kind of where the problem lies with deep dungeons, is that the hard part, like, depending on how much you want to include in that statement, the hard part is somewhere between 20 and 50 floors. As I said, some people say Palace of the Dead gets hard after 150, some say that the hard part is 170 and above. So it kind of depends on what you're looking at. But around 20 floors. But there's such a long lead up to the hard part. Which just means that, like, I'm pretty sure that if there was a setting, like, if Palace of the Dead had an extra checkpoint for, like, just start at floor 150 with, like, a full bag of Pomanders, Like, if that was an option, and it counted for the Necromancer title, then I don't think the Necromancer title would be as rare as it is. I'm not saying that it, like, oh, well, then it would be easy. I'm just more saying that there's a lot of players that look at the required time investment just to have a shot at it and say, no thanks. Nope. Not interested, actually. And all of those players that might have the skill to do it, but just, like, nope out because of the initial time investment, would then just go and do it. And that would be a bit like if, like, Savage bosses gave you more frequent checkpoints. I'm not saying that that's needed, by the way, but it would be a little bit similar to that. Aerodel says, I'm sure that is why they made the subsequent deep dungeons only 100 floors. Yes. Pretty sure about that as well. Pretty confident that that's exactly the reason, is that the first 100 floors of Palace of the Dead is basically irrelevant. It's just kind of there. And then the other set of 100 floors is basically where the run actually starts. And because that's where the floor, like, the run actually starts, it also means that, like, the challenge is, like, yeah, the first 100 is the story mode. And yeah, that's the funny thing, is that did it need that? Did it need that many floors of story mode? I guess is a good question. On a different note, I am not super happy that I haven't been picking up more racing. They really like decreasing my maximum HP. We reduce your maximum HP by like 30%. By the way, here on your left, there is an item that makes you take 30% less damage while you're on the floor, essentially. It's the classic, haha, welcome to the floor. On this floor, you can not use items, and also enemies have gloom, and also you can't use abilities. And on your left, there is a Serenity Pomander. Just like, why? You're just going to put the cure in the room with me, then why? The ways of deep dungeons are inscrutable. Yeah, that you are right about, definitely. The ways of RNG. The Pomander that could solve everything is in the final room, you check? Oh yeah, that's also a good one. Right. Look at the enemy you're fighting, guy. Was that just sudden? Felt really sudden. Oh, it was sudden. Yeah, that sounds about right, Azir. They really like to have me at 7k HP, don't they? Aha! You're 30% less HP. How's that 30% damage reduction from the previous floor treating ya? Oh, it's still active. Oh. I see. Splat. Whee! Oh. I had a feeling it wouldn't let me grab it. It cancelled the sleep by auto-attacking me between the bad breath cast. It's big brain time. Game trying to bully you into eating food? Well, I can just eat food. I'd actually forgotten. Hey, new Volga. Hope you're doing well. Is Picto going? I think it's going kind of well, but we almost just suddenly died because of a toad. Like, we were really close by accident. But it's going well. Yeah, that sounds about right, Isu. Oh, right. I actually wanted to build a Mog of the Ages before I went in here. Then I forgot. I'm just that genius. I wanted to do it, but then I forgot. I want to try and hold a little bit of burst, because I'm pretty sure there's ads spawning at some point. That I was hoping I could one-shot with the burst. Excuse me? Never mind. I guess I'll just splat them normally. I could probably have killed both there with a fire in red too. Or fire 2 in red. It is pretty funny. The biggest concern, I remember the biggest concern when we were talking about what job to start with here was that Pictomancer does not have any self-healing. But because of sustaining potions, that's basically whatever. Hey! I mean... There's some chances for like 2 lines, I guess. How does it stack up against Machinist? Well, Machinist has slightly less burst as far as I know. And in exchange for that, it has a heal, it has... does it have Tactician? It has an Interrupt, it has Peloton, it has a Slow, it has a Bind when those matter, and the only thing Pictomancer has to, like, fight that is a Barrier and a Sleep, I guess, and Addle. Like, Pictomancer is basically like, so what would you like to bring to Palace of the Dead? I would like a cannon. Just a big cannon, that's all I want. That's Pictomancer. Machinist is a multi-tool. Pictomancer is just a cannon. Which means that Pictomancer just, like, strolls across the entire first 100 floors, and then once mobs start having enough HP to actually survive getting palm-mused in the face, Pictomancer start going, wait, not like that. Doesn't have Reassemble though? Yes, it has Reassemble. That's level 6. And it has Drill. Yeah, basically, Machinist has a utility belt of things, and it is more mobile than Pictomancer. But it does slightly less damage than Pictomancer. Right, it doesn't have Dismantle. But yeah, the biggest problem that I've run into so far is that Pictomancer does not have an Interrupt, because that means that every time I see a Mimic, either it costs me a Purity Pomander, or I have to kill it before it uses the Infatuation spell that I cannot stop. Like, that's the problem. That is also the reason why you might see me hold on to Hammer, like Striking Muse, all the time, is because if I click a chest and it's a Mimic, then if I have nothing else, then there's no chance that I'll kill it in time. But if I have Hammer and maybe a Living Muse, then I can probably kill it before it uses Infatuation, at least so far. But if I just throw everything, then I can't do it. If you have plenty of Witching, you can use that. Oh, I hadn't actually thought about that. For some reason, I just sort of assumed that it wouldn't work on Mimics. I don't have any reason why I would assume that, I just did. In the same kind of way that, for some reason, my brain goes, well, you can't use Atonement on Paladin in between the Blades combo. You can, by the way, you can, don't worry. I don't say that in my guides, I just don't say it. Uh-oh. That's a very, very lucky paralysis bias, you know that? And like perfectly timed. Does this work? Ow. It does. Good to know. Not worth it. That's a too long cooldown on a too important potion. Yeah, exactly, Azure. That's actually the reason why I rarely ever use my Witching. Is because I want to have them. For if, like... It's very nice to have Witching if you step in something nasty. And when I say nasty, I mean a luring trap. Step in one of those. Witching often can save you, I feel. Sometimes, at least. At really high floors, it might not actually matter. And the only thing that can truly save you is raising. Witching sounds like the most common Pomander to find. I think it's very likely that it is confirmation bias. It's simply because Witching is one of those where you often find one and go, well, I don't need it right now, and then you just move on. Which makes it very common that you find one and don't need it. Which makes it seem even more common as a result, is my guess. Fast boulder. As opposed to a slow boulder. Where is the exit? Where is it? What's with all these Dullahans? By the way, isn't a Dullahan supposed to be headless or something? Ah, yes. It's a monster house. It's a party in the house. Put your hands in the air. For the party house. Is he coming at me? I think he's coming at me. That is a problem. Are you serious? 1 HP. As opposed to the supersonic boulder. Yeah. Hey, Infinite Mind. Hope you're doing well. Amarod is a really cool dungeon. No question about that. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If only you had repose. Well, I mean, I have sleep. But it still puts you in combat with the thing when you use sleep. So it doesn't really solve the problem. And that paralysis is actually really scary with all of these guys in this room. Is it possibly the strongest paralysis I've ever been a part of? Very annoying that they just apply it. Surprise instant. Like there's nothing you can do. You will get paralyzed if you face one of those bias. Oh man. Oh man. Can you... Wow. I'm getting paralyzed a lot. Constantly. Will you let me leave? Of course you won't. Hey Yannick, hope you're doing well. Get paralyzed to use spine drops like a boss. See, the thing is, I actually did use a spine drop earlier, and then I realized it puts sustaining potion on a 90-second cooldown. I'm not a fan of that. Given that I don't have any other consistent healing. There's also just the fact that the problem originated from repeatedly fighting bias in the party house, I guess. And there it's just like, oh, I used a spine drop to get rid of the paralysis. Well, here's another one. Like, have another paralysis. It's unavoidable. And at that point, spine drop still has sustaining potion on cooldown, so it feels like you feel a little bit stupid. Strength. Oh, nice. The floor of swords and shields. Have a little bit of both. I mean, I think I would be a lot more inclined to use the like the spine drops if the attacks that I'm going to get hit by would actually kill me. Which does indeed mean that that's basically me saying, well, looking forward, if we run into a mob that will actually one-shot me, if I don't dodge its telegraph, then I'm probably dead if there's a bias in the area. Please look forward to it. Pictomancer learns to draw Phoenix down to cast Raise and a potion to cast Cure. That would be really funny, but also incredibly unexpected. As far as I've heard, the development team is looking at the possibility of maybe taking away Res from Summoner. Would be a lot more surprising if they gave it to Pictomancer. Do you think they'll ever add the other ranks to Grand Companies? Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Hey, maybe they added with the PvP changes. Hey, Taldemar. Hope you're doing well. Hello. Thank you for celebrating a month with the Cult of the Pink. Thank you so much for the support, Taldemar. Yeah, exactly, Raylia. I think that might be part of the reason why they haven't exactly done anything about it, because if they removed it from Summoner, it would also make sense to remove it from Red Mage, but if they remove it from Red Mage, it starts to feel like... Like, if you really think about it, how much white magic does Red Mage have? Like, if you really, really think about it, they have offensive white magic? Like, in fairness, I'm pretty sure Red Mages actually have more white magic than black magic, because black magic, they only have attacks. For white, they also have the Cure and the Raise. So it's not like it would be an unfair balance, but it's a little weird, isn't it? But then at the same time, what would you give them? Yeah, Paladin could have rest. Those were some weird times. They could, yes. But, just keep in mind, to actually cast Res in combat required a trait, which was unique to Conjurer specifically. So you could choose Raise as a Paladin, but you couldn't use it where it actually mattered. Paladin could use it as a free Phoenix Down, essentially. Because Phoenix Downs can't be used in combat either. Neofocus says, Paladin should get rest, change my mind. Part of the reason why Paladin takes full damage from the player that they cover, even through Hallowed Ground, is specifically because otherwise Paladin, and only Paladin, could do some incredibly degenerate stuff in hard content. Such as, but not limited to, use cover to protect a healer so that they can, like, healer LB after a mechanic that is otherwise lethal. If Paladin had a raise, then they would be able to use Hallowed Ground. Oh, I didn't actually need to kill this guy. And then just raise someone through the mechanic that was supposed to kill you. So if you gave Paladin a rest, while on the one hand, oh, that's a kind of nice, unique utility of Paladin, it would be such an overpowered utility that it wouldn't be possible to balance the other tanks around that without giving all the tanks a raise. It's the same kind of idea as the reason why all tanks have an invuln. It's too good to not have. Yeah, exactly, Gleaming. Hallowed Ground is exactly long enough that a Paladin could weave Hallowed Ground, cast Res, and then still be invulnerable. Oh yeah, that too, Bronzom. That is a good point. Requiescat removes the cast time of spells. That would also be insanely overpowered. Also, hey Kat, hope you're doing well. We were talking about the Red Mage in the context of the discussion that Summoner should lose their res. And then the counterpoint is, the counterbalance is, then Red Mage probably also can't have a res. That would be a little unfair. And then the question was more that, it wasn't as in change Red Mage for the worse, it was more that, well, if you take away res, then what white magic do they then have? Like, it was more like, it leaves a gaping hole in the Red Mage toolkit, whereas Summoner is more like, oh, it's a Scholar ability, and they just also have it for some reason. Like, it wouldn't be missing in the same way. It would be missing mechanically, but, like, in terms of, like, what a Summoner does, I don't think that the rest would be missing if it was suddenly gone. And that's also an important detail, is that for Summoner, I feel like it's possible that this also applies to Summoners, but Red Mages, I think a lot of people specifically choose Red Mage. People specifically choose Red Mage for its flexibility. Well, counterpoint to that, FFXIV, Red Mage's whole kit is that it's a mix between White Mage and Black Mage, and I feel like Erase is a massive part of the toolkit. What? So, it's a mix between Red Mage. It's a mix between White Mage and Black Mage. Aside from the actual rotational attacks, of which it has equal amounts White and Black Magic, what part of Red Mage is Black Magic? The Thunder, the Fire, the Flare does not count. That is like the attack arsenal, and it has equivalent White Magic. For White Magic, outside of this category, it has the Raise and the Cure. What does it have for Black Magic? I know that's a really, really weird argument. A sword that does damage isn't shiny. That has nothing to do with black magic. My point is mostly that, while yes, Red Mage is like supposed to be like equal white and black magic, it just feels a lot like the thing that Red Mage is more of is the utility job. Which is the argument I would make for why Summoner shouldn't lose res. As I was saying, a lot of players choose to play Red Mage because it has the Cure and the Raise, and is also a DPS. Which means, like, in contrast, I'm pretty sure, not 100% confident, and it of course doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm pretty sure that there's a much lesser percentage of Summoner players that chose Summoner because it has a res. It also has a heal. It doesn't really do anything. It has one. So like that's the perspective that I'm looking at it from. And that's also the thing, is that what would you give it from Black Mage? Like, what can you give it of Black Magic? Black Magic is damage, right? That's what it does. That's all it does. When it really comes down to it, that's what Black Mage does, is damage. Like, the only thing they could give it would be like, oh yeah, they make, like, later in the game, like in the next expansion, they make MP more of a thing again. Like, they remove Lucid Dreaming or something, and then each job has to work harder for MP. And then they give Red Mage Umbral Soul or something. Like, the Umbral Soul, ow. Like, that's something they could do. And that's also something that Black Mage does well, is a lot of MP. Also, Yannick said, let's see, what was it Yannick said? That they were like 10 floors behind, was it 3 sets behind me? I'm not very fast at this, so I'm pretty sure you can catch up to me if you have a full party going. Black magic is also traditionally thoughts like bio and poison, but that'd be a bit radically different for the game. It would. And there's also the additional thing that Red Mage has this weird thing where even if it uses something that is actually quote-unquote a dot from the jobs it inherits it from, when Red Mage does it, it's not a dot. Red Mage could have Holy and Ultima. But yeah, that's kind of the problem there. But that's my perspective, is that Red Mage is a job that people are more likely to play for the utility. Oh. Look, a crystal. Whereas Summoner, these days anyway, is probably more likely played for its ease of use and things like that. The triple cast. Which means that it would ruin the identity of Red Mage a lot harder if they lost tools like the Cure and the the Cure and the Raise. But it is hard to balance because Red Mage is like in content where the Raise is helpful. The Raise is irreplaceable. Like, nothing can compete with the Raise when you need the Raise. Right? Nothing. That's also like, that's exactly like, that circles back to the tank thing with invulns. If you removed, hypothetically, if you removed Holmgang, if you just removed Holmgang, then Warrior would immediately, instantaneously, possibly drop to being the least popular tank in like Savage content. Because it's simply incapable of doing certain strategies. Like, straight up incapable. And the same would happen for any other tank. Like, right now, Paladin sometimes has this weakness that, oh, you need a certain amount of invulns, so it's not super convenient if you have 2 Paladins, but you don't have 2 Paladins. Like, just don't have 2 Paladins, Lamau. Which is relatively easy to overcome, right? But if you removed the invuln, like flat out removed it, that would pose a real balancing problem. And also that, BMO. Right now, Summoner is in a weird spot. The weirdest spot, I actually think, is that players sat down and looked into pet potencies and discovered that not only does Summoner have the weakest pet potencies of all jobs with pets, why? But then we also had that discovery that the trait you get at level 94 as Summoner, the potency boosts who your pets specifically don't work. So of all the jobs with pets, the one that should be focused on pets suck the most. Like, their pets suck the most for some reason. Yeah. I want my abilities, thank you. And I don't know if Summoner outright requires a rework. It is a little difficult because what they've made with Summoner is as all jobs with pets, all 3 of them. You know what, Brontom? Did you know that Astrologian and White Mage are pet jobs? Ninja is as well. Ain't that weird? Lilybell? Earthly Star? Bunchen? Weirdly, Nominum, the frog isn't the pet. It's the shadow clone that is the pet. And among all those, all the pet jobs, Summoner is way weaker. Like, actually, their pets are way weaker than everyone else's pets. Like, you might have heard in some of my videos that I've said that pet potency, like, circle, like, hangs around in, like, you know, a sixth weaker than the player. That's only for Summoner. All other jobs, it, like, bottoms out at, like, 10% weaker. And some of them are almost as strong as the owner. And there's also Dark Knight, which I also realized actually is stronger than their owner. Because they don't have the built-in tank damage down. You're a tank, so you do 20% less damage because you're a tank. Hey Shaq, hope you're doing well. Yeah, it's difficult. What should they do with Summoner? I think it's in a fine place. It's like, the thing is, Summoner in a lot of Final Fantasy games isn't like a pet job necessarily. It's more like it summons a thing, right? It's not a pet job. It's just that its magic is summoning a thing, like Morg of the Ages. You summon a Moogle for a second. That's not a pet. That's just an attack. Oh, that's easy. Like, it's a little bit like how in Heaven on High that you get those materia things where you can just summon a primal to do something. That's how Summoner is in some Final Fantasy games. So, like, it's not entirely inaccurate for Summoner in 14 to, quote-unquote, not be a pet job. And that is also a weird point, Bimo, that a lot of the time, very often, Summoner on its own doesn't do very much, because the summons are supposed to be something really, really big and impactful. So the Summoner is given something else to do, like the White Mage Summoner mixes and things like that, so that they have something else to do, because that's the only way for them to make summons really, really strong, so that they're really impactful when you use them, without making it so that the Summoner basically just is a nothing burger until it actually uses them. Instead of it being Breadworm Mage. That's really funny. Breadworm Mage. And I agree, they could do a little bit more there. And this is bad. I'm not gonna make it. Have to use this. And this. And this. Yoshi P, this is the 7th time you've shown the class Bahamut. Well, this time Bahamut looks different. We gave him sword wings. Huh? What do you think? Sword wings. I'm just saying, Solar Bahamut does look kind of cool, but it's weird. And I'm not a huge fan of them emphasizing Bahamut so hard that they went, well, we kind of already filled out that button. What do we do? Just, you know, just push the 2 other summons further back so that we can fit the cool new guy. That's really weird. Imagine if Summoner could summon Yojimbo and had to give him gills to attack. I know this isn't Final Fantasy XIV. This is a game I really enjoy. Really awesome. It's like it's intended like it's clearly meant to be like it's an indie game that is basically trying to do like a modern take on old school Final Fantasy games. Imagine if something like the old Final Fantasy like 1, 2, 3, like those ranges, had an enmity meter. You can have a tank, and the tank can taunt, and can make it so that enemies attack the tank specifically. So you can have those kind of strategies instead of just having frontline and backline, and things like that. In that game, it's called Crystal Project. In that game, Summoner unlocks its spells by you defeating... I don't believe they're called primals, but like basically you seek out primals, and when you defeat them, you unlock them for all of your characters that choose to play Summoner. But you can only use each summon exactly once per combat. As in, I don't believe it works if you bring multiple summoners. Like, only one of them can summon the big cool guy. But then, to make it interesting, of course, and actually useful, all of the summons give you stuff that you can't get otherwise. Like, extremely strong attacks, or... give everyone in your party reflect instantly, whereas normally you would have to like give it one by one to your team, so it would take a while to set up. You could like there's one that blinds all enemies for 2 turns or something like that. I think it's 2 turns or 2 attacks. And blind in that game basically means that the enemy cannot hit. Like, they will not land any attack unless the attack specifically stipulates that it cannot miss or something like that. There's only one other move in the game that can blind, from the player perspective anyway. And that one is like, oh, it can only be used by a rogue if they're at minimum threat. Like, they have to be at the bottom of the threat meter, and the kind of character that you would have as a rogue can do a lot of damage, so... it means that that character has to sandbag, essentially, to be able to blind. And, like, it costs resources, so you can't use it every turn. So, like, those summons, a summon that blinds all enemies for 2 turns is incredibly unique and very valuable because you don't have that ability otherwise, but you only get one of them per fight. How would you do that? Like, something like that with a summoner in Final Fantasy XIV? You can't. Like, you straight up can't. It would... Like, there's no way to make that balanced. So, instead, we have a lot of summons that just summon frequently. Well, we don't actually have a lot of summons. We have some summons that get summoned frequently. Let's see, Parent says, literally all they needed to do was give us a second set of primals after Bahamut, so there was a clear delineation between Phoenix and Bahamut phase, and then probably buff the demi damage a bit. Yeah, that sounds alright. I'm actually pretty sure that people would have appreciated that more. Now, the big question is, should those summons be, like, distinctly different from, like... And what I mean by distinctly different is... Do those summons need to have, like, different effects? Like, function mechanically differently from the first 3? Or is it fine if, when you summon, I don't know, you summon Ramu, he gives you a Thunderstorm, which is a 3-second cast with a 3.5-second GCD. And then you also get Lightning, well, you'd get the Amethyst, right? For those, and they have a 1.5-second GCD, and they're instant. Like, would that be fine? Like, of course, potency changes and all that, but would that be fine? Would people be happy with that? Pull up the clip of Arthur's dodging the mountain buster from Titan Extreme because Titan was blinded by Flash. Wow. That could also work. Look at the Magi. It was just like a suggestion of like. It didn't have to be that specifically. It could also be Rameau is actually similar to Ifrit, like whatever. Is Summon Garuda just Summoner's version of the Red Mage Burst? Not quite. Not quite. Oh. Can I use this now? Nope. Well, I have to use it after the summon then. Awkward. Don't stand in the fire, please. I need to be able to get under you. Can you... Oh, right. You just run to the middle. See, Brontom, you can use Slipstream first. So it doesn't quite work. Like, you can just... Like, the most common scenario is actually that you summon Garuda and then you use Slipstream. And you Swift cast it a lot of the time, too. So I feel like it's too much of a stretch for that comparison, but I get where you're going, what you're going for. Is this guy just looping? Boy, are you looping? I think this guy do be looping. He's a loopy boy. Wink. Wink. Splat. It is really weird, Brontom, because a lot of the time, like, the hard part is whether you get the mechanic or not. And the higher floor boss is also harder. The thing is, this is floor 30 with higher numbers. Floor 30 is not very hard. Is a faster Fiat self-cast? Well, I mean, the trick there is that by me moving the boss around, he like basically telegraphs I'm going to cast Fiat Self because he runs to the middle every time he uses Fiat Self. So he, like, by moving him I get a little extra time. What is going on with those bots these days? What in the world? I guess they're trying to dodge some sort of filter? There isn't a filter. I'm removing you myself, Sasuke. Aerodel says, interestingly, Pictomancer started taking some possible icons from Summoner with Giant Chocobo, Nadine. That's true. And it would also be weird if Summoner suddenly got Moogle, now that Pictomancer has some Moogle stuff. It would likely be Ramuh, Shiva, Leviathan. Have Ramuh with like a dot ability. Shiva with some sword moves, maybe a Leviathan dash. Kind of have them mirror Titan Garuda Ifrit with Shiva, Ramuh, Leviathan. That could be. See, the funny thing there is that you could have Shiva basically copy the Ifrit toolkit. And instead of you running in and smacking with a firebook, you just summon like a sword and shield, and then you just charge in with a shield bash, and then you slash down with your sword as the follow-up. And Ramuh's dot could be that you summon a thundercloud. There you go, that's Garuda. Like, that's basically Slipstream. And Leviathan, well, I don't know about that one. I don't actually know about that one. Maybe just have like a tail slap come out of the ground, just splash as a quote-unquote Leviathan buster. But like, I'm just saying that there would be ways to make those 3 primals straight up fit exactly what we already have. It would of course be cooler if they made it so that the second set was different from the first set. I'm just saying that there's a lot of ways they could do it, and that's probably part of the reason why I'm so kind of disappointed with Solar Bahamut, because it just feels like we don't really want to do 3 summons. You can have 1. And if they had only made 1, it would make the rest of the rotation feel really, really unbalanced in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like, you would... Like, let's say that at level 100, you actually unlocked Ramuh. Just Ramuh. And he replaces Titan after Demi Bahamut. Only after Demi Bahamut. And Ramuh, you know, he has like a certain number of rights, and then he has some astral flow thing. But of course, it does more damage than all the other primals, because otherwise it's not an upgrade. So now it would completely flatline the experimentation of summoners, because it would mean, yes, every time you do a burst, there's only one answer. Once you finish Bahamut, you summon Ramuh. You know the trick for the next boss yet? I don't quite remember. Can you enlighten me, Yannick, before I start? Resolution. Oh yeah, she summons zombies, right? The boss is an undead. Oh. Which floor is it where the boss summons zombies that are weak to wind? What's the hardest part of Solo 200? Behemoth at floor 180. What's the best way to build up Ether Pool? Do Palace of the Dead. Like that's how I did it. I just did Palace of the Dead. But one way to do it is just repeat it. Like, once you unlock the checkpoint, floor 51 to 60, just repeatedly do that is also a way to do it. I think. But it'll take a little more. It'll take a while. There's a current problem with Summoner, though. There used to be a choice depending on party composition, but now after buff phase, it's Titan or nothing. Well, there you go. I do recall right at the start of Endwalker, not the start of Endwalker, the start of Dawn Trail, that there were some experimentations where people were looking into whether maybe Ifrit or Garuda was better. But it turned out that it was like a super duper mega specific thing, and ultimately Titan better. Isn't Summoner still broken for now? In Palace of the Dead, you mean, Delane? 150 has the zombies. Right. I just remembered that because I specifically remember when I did this on Summoner that I held my emerald rights in that fight, specifically to just like snipe the zombies or something weird like that. Oh yeah, that's true, Delane. The pet bug that I have a video on is still present. It's still bugged. It's bugged until 7.1. It's broken in the way that the level 94 trait that increases the potency of your summons and a few other things doesn't work on your summons. Like, specifically the part that boosts the potency on your summons doesn't work. Incidentally, the same problem applies to Embrace. Thank Gyarados. The same problem applies to Embrace on Scholar. The level 85 enhanced healing magic trait that increases the potency of Embrace doesn't work. And both of those things are planned to be fixed in 7.1, which I believe we know now is coming in mid-November. Until then, job bugged. On the one hand, it should be mentioned that we were told that the reason why they're not changing it is because they balanced it around the damage they were seeing in testing, which also had this bug. So whatever damage you're seeing Summoner do right now is the intended amount, apparently. And you might say, well, they're really weak. Well, they're very, very mobile. Maybe that's what the developers intended. Maybe that's what they wanted. Like, maybe that was the point. Like, that's the weird part, is that sometimes when people see, like, the developers go, yeah, this is working as intended, and it's, like, underpowered in a way, like, it's weaker than the other options, the assumption is always, well, that can't be right, because they're weaker. Yes. That's right. Presumably, the developers didn't want Summoner to be mega strong, also be one of the two mages with a res, and also be super mobile. I don't know how to balance that. I don't know what's fair. But apparently the developers believe that this is fair. The development team is a bit lost on what to do with the jobs. My guess, which is a very hopeful guess. A very hopeful guess. And, of course, that also puts me in the position of being very likely wrong. But my hopeful guess is that the reason why the developers might have trouble with what they're doing might be because, like, they set this thing with job reworks and, like, big changes that they said was coming in 8.0. I don't think they actually said a specific version, but they said it wasn't coming in Dawn Trail or something like that. Maybe they're working hard on that. And that means that as it stands right now, the job functionality in Dawn Trail is basically being held on in a respirator, right? In the same way that 1.0 was basically just being kept alive just enough that there was stuff happening while they were working on 2.0. Maybe. But yeah, it's very, very hopeful. A very hopeful perspective to go, yeah, sure, they'll fix it next expansion. But, you know, I don't feel like we've reached this point of, it's really bad, until Dawn Trail. Like, it hasn't been seen as such a big issue until Dawn Trail. So we were told, we're working on it. It's coming soon to a cinema near you. When we finally started asking questions, they said, yeah, it's coming, we're working on it. So let's see what happens in 8.0, right? Let's see if they actually nailed it. Like, maybe they actually, like, bring it and actually nail it. And in that case, those that said, they're not gonna nail it, will be the ones that look stupid. But we don't know until we see it. And it is perfectly understandable to look at it and go, yeah, no. It's just going to be more of the same. Because, understandably, it's very easy to say we'll fix it next expansion. It's actually incredibly easy to say. In fact, that conveniently gives you a full, like, 2 to 3 years to figure out what you do about it. You have 2 to 3 years to figure out what you're going to say to the fans when you inevitably then don't fix it next expansion. You have a new excuse ready. That's a lot of time to come up with an excuse. If you ever needed time to come up with an excuse. Uh-oh. I don't know how to get around that. Oh, it's just a cone. Maximum safety precautions. Run behind a wall. Don't look at it. But, yeah, that's my hope. That maybe they'll fix it next expansion. And then we'll see. Is it just casters that are upset at balance right now? Are the other roles also as annoyed? It's not only balance things. Line of sight doesn't always work in Palace. I know, but sometimes it works, Yannick. And if you don't know what the thing does, you might as well, like, try everything. What's the worst that could happen? If it doesn't work, then I'm dead anyway. Because it's like twofold. One thing is that a lot of jobs might be somewhat like out of balance, and that's particularly egregious with mages, because Pictomancer is completely up in the clouds, Black Mage is a little bit behind, and then Red Mage and Summoner is not amazing. But other categories have their own problems. But the key thing that people are have the biggest trouble with right now is, and this is the important thing, is that the weakest jobs right now are still viable. You can still play them. It's fine. It's fine enough. The real problem is if the weakest job and if the strongest job and the weakest job both suck to play. Like, they actually aren't fun. That's a problem. If they're both viable, fine. But if they are not fun to play, that's a problem. And that's actually an interesting thing that we have noticed, especially with Dark Knights somewhat recently, is that when Dark Knights initially seemed to be, like, not at the top at the start of Dawn Trail, it was almost like a veil was lifted from the Dark Knight mains going, wait a minute, now that I'm not seeing the biggest damage numbers on the planet, I am realizing this kind of blows. This isn't super fun to play. Which circles back to an argument that I've presented before, that some players will play the best job in the game, regardless of what it is. They would play a job that only has one button, that just does the most damage. If it was strongest, they'd be fine with that. Some players would be fine with that. And some among them might even defend it and go, what do you mean? It's awesome. Right up until it's no longer the strongest job. And yeah, exactly, Necrophits. That's kind of the problem, is that Summoner has a very basic rotation when it really comes to it. It has nuance. It has things it can optimize. It has that. It does. Like, let's not say it doesn't, because it does have some things. It's just that it was probably one of the jobs that needed a little more in Dawn Trail the most. And, like, practically speaking, what Summoner got that wasn't just potency increases was Lux Solaris, which is a heal, which more than likely is just a case of, like, well, if we kick Phoenix down the path so that you get less Phoenix casts, then we need to give you some sort of heal to compensate for that. And then you get Searing Flash. That's it. That's pretty much it. Like, you got one thing, and it's an OGCD. You just click it on cooldown. Pretty much. That's it. Oh. But yeah, exactly, Bokaj. That's an interesting thing, is that the problem with Summoner isn't, oh, it's too simple. It's more that it just became, like, it basically didn't change. So, like, it didn't really evolve with the expansion very much. So it's just the same again. And it was so simple that there's very little to actually work around, like, work with in optimizing it. That's not a good sign. But there's nothing wrong with having a job that is relatively simple to play. But a job doesn't have to be that simple to be simple to play while you're proccing. Like, take for instance Warrior. Some of you see me, like, watch me when I do the Savage streams. And Perrin, for instance, sometimes points out that for some like that I'm wasting Infuriates and things like that. Like, I could have kept it for the 2-minute burst. Sometimes I don't save resources or fell cleaving during bursts and things like that. But that's fine. That's the difference between, I'm just kind of focusing on the mechanics here. I'm doing good enough damage. I could do slightly more, but I'm not. Summoner, like, I'm pretty sure Summoner starts and ends that concept at you can use Energy Drain and then just hold the two. It's called Necrotize now, right? You just hold both of them for the 2-minute burst when you use Energy Drain on the 1 minute. That's it. That's the start and the end of the optimization. There isn't any more, really. There's some optimization in when you use Ifrit and when you use Slipstream. But that's a lot more, like, muddy and difficult to see for a lot of players, which means that the job ultimately feels extremely basic. And yeah, Perrin, it's like, the thing is with the Pictomancer situation is that it's like a multi-punch situation, because Pictomancer is the strongest mage at the moment. Pictomancer is also the new kid on the block, so players would play Pictomancer just because it is Pictomancer and it's new. It's like multi reasons why it's getting a lot more representation. But the fact that it is also at the top of the food chain certainly doesn't help the other casters. And yeah, there's also the part that others mentioned, that the stance that the development team tends to just refuse or rarely ever nerfs any job means that if they release a too strong job, what's the result? All the other jobs get buffed until they're equal to the crazy overpowered job. At some point, something's gotta give. And just potency-wise, like, I'm just saying, a level 100 Pictomancer can one-shot itself. Which, I mean, it's not, like, those numbers are not used in PvP, but it kinda, like, damage numbers kinda lose their meaning when you notice that your attacks, like some of the attacks you just spam at a boss, could kill you, like kill yourself. No, don't kill yourself. Don't do that. That's dangerous. That's unhealthy. Don't do that. It could eliminate your entire HP bar instantly. Possibly without critting. Knife advice from Kai, yep. Like, when it reaches that point, it looks a little silly. And that's an interesting point, Bevo. That, but you know, what's really funny about that is that I remember from Endwalker that was a common problem in Party Finder, that it was often difficult to fill the physical ranged role. Which kind of makes sense when you think about it. I think I've talked about this before. Is it unfair to say, hypothetically, that the players you would find in Party Finder are more likely to be, like, a little more selfish? Like, as players. Like, more... I'm not trying to, like, say anything bad about anyone. I'm just saying, like, there's a reasonable chance that someone who plays mainly in Party Finder would be less likely to be, like, a real team player, right? And Dancer and Bard are not, like, their damage numbers is not anime protagonist power levels. So it makes sense that the kind of jobs you would see more of in Party Finder would be the ones that are stronger on their own. Jobs that do a ludicrous amount of damage, like Pictomancer, Samurai, Viper, basically all physical, like melee jobs, when it really comes to it. And yeah, also that, Vivi, but like that's of course like also a thing, but I'm exactly speaking about trying to add to the point that not only that you have to basically be full, like me in regards to loot, because, well, you're not in a static. You being nice to that stranger and letting them have the loot doesn't give you anything. Doesn't give you anything. So why should you care? But I'm specifically talking about that kind of player, right? That kind of player that would thrive in that kind of environment is probably less likely to play a more selfless job, meaning that it makes sense that healers and ranged physical jobs, and perhaps to get even more specific, things like red mages might be less common in Party Finder. Because the kind of player that would play in Party Finder is not the kind of player who would play a support job. So hey, Rothkind, hope you're doing well. Anime supporting character job, my beloved. Yeah, that makes sense, Bimo. And I also agree with that. That it would be pretty fun if, you know, they made the support, like, made something like physical range. Like, if they emphasized the support part of ranged physical jobs more, that would probably be good. Because again, who's playing that? Like, who's playing those jobs? Do the majority of players that main Bard care about doing the biggest damage numbers on the planet? Or are they more like, oh man, I want my group to do the biggest damage numbers on the planet? And then there's also the problem of how do you balance that? If you make the raid buffs too strong, then you can't not have a Bard. Who's playing Machinist for the supporting part? Probably not many. They probably play it because gun. But like, fair point. I play Machinist when I just want to turn off brain. Fair enough. Yeah, if you're not trying to like do the mega most damage on the planet, then Machinist is really, really simple, I feel. Oh no, a mimic! I think it's dead, everyone. I think I got it. I think I got it. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure, but not 100%. That's good to hear, Jack. Yeah, that's also something important to note. Is that when I say Machinist is super simple when you're not trying to do the mostest amount of damage, is that Machinist can get really, really strict if you're trying to like do it like the perfect burst. Because it means you need a specific amount of heat gauge and you need to use your specific things at specific times, and gets quite strict. But you get like 90% of that damage, probably. At least a majority of the damage. By just using your cooldowns, man. Can't I hope they add some role and class jank back in 8.0. That would be nice. Doesn't Bard also have that problem? That it has too many OGCDs and they're way too easy to let burst? Bard is really strange. Exactly, Bokaj. Bard is a lot of timers. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I would actually say that something that Bard has that a lot of other jobs don't have a lot of these days is in your downtime, you're constantly doing something. You're constantly looking at something. There's not really any point where you're just like, technically, yes, there are points where you're kind of just clicking burst shot, burst shot, burst shot. Ooh, a proc, a fulgent arrow. But it's only so long because you have to watch. Oh, heartbreak shot. Is the time for that? Oh, imperial arrow I need to use. Is it time to switch song? Check my dots. Oh, Sidewinder's ready. That means it's probably about time for an Apex arrow as well at some point. Let me check my resources. Not quite. Or, oh, I actually should have used it a bit ago. All that stuff. So Bard has something going on constantly. Whereas even something like Machinist can reach a point where they actually just go 1, 2, 3 for a bunch of GCDs. Where they straight up go, oh, well, I mean, drill, I could wait for a charge. And then the rest isn't coming for a while. And yeah, also that BMO. That is possibly the biggest, the most crazy jank that I've seen on any job in a long time. Is that sometimes Bard gets so many repertoire procs that they're sitting there like, well, I already have my my gauge full, but my burst is coming up in like 20 seconds. Uh-oh. I didn't mean to do that. You know what's really weird about drill necrophits? Did you know that before you get the trait that gives drill a second charge, its cooldown scales with skill speed, but once you get the second charge, it no longer scales with skill speed? Which has the effect that sometimes when you're like learning machinist that when, like, if you're used to the interaction that it scales with skill speed, you're used to the fact that, well, if you just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, like, or you do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, then drill will be ready on every 8th GCD, no questions asked. But if you have a little bit of skill speed and you have the second charge, if you use both of your drill charges right out the gate, then when you reach, like, you know, the third charge, you press it exactly on cooldown, you think, doesn't work. It's not ready, it clips your GCD as a result. Very annoying. Yannick says, I pretend skill speed doesn't exist. Well, given how many jobs hate skill speed at this point, it feels like the developers sometimes act like it doesn't exist either. Why is there skill speed on gear then? Like every time they make a gear piece, they just like bring out the wheel. Skill speed! How much does all this rotation strictness matter for newer players? It doesn't, Jack. Ultimately, most content in the game, like, if you see my guides, right? The opener sort of like sets you up so that you're pretty good. If you do that right, and then just click buttons on cooldown, a lot of jobs just work, and that's fine. You don't have to think further on it than that. And often you can do well enough, like, by just understanding the basics and like of what the job wants to accomplish. You don't have to do the 2-minute burst perfectly every time. You don't even need, like, for some jobs, you don't even need to acknowledge the 2-minute burst exists to do decently well. And as it stands right now, the current rate tier is relatively lenient in Savage, so you probably don't have to worry. So, you don't have to worry, Jack. When you're ready for it, you'll probably know. And then you will probably also be directly interested in doing it, so you won't feel like you're being forced. Can you... I can't see what kind of treasure it is. Is it gold? It's another strength. Well then. Anton says, I wouldn't be surprised if skill speed is added to proc gear just to make it worth it to grind different content for different pieces. You know, that would be a weird, but not impossible reality. They straight up put skill speed, like, oh yeah, the reason why we put skill speed on basically all of the normal raid ranged physical pieces is because do Savage. You don't want skill speed? Too bad, do Savage. Or buy a crafted set, but there's not very much crit on those, so... Oh. Ah, welcome to the floor! It's gloom, so all the enemies are very strong. On your left is a chest with the cure. Wait, don't use it! Oh, man. See, the saw analogy. Do you want to play a game? You've been poisoned. On the table in front of you is the cure. What, really? Yes. Is that it? Yeah. Why? I didn't feel like going to work today. Just wanted a short work day, you know? Even for a maniac like me, like that could be something. Sometimes you just want to go home early, and I'm done when you're done, whether you win or lose. Can we get this commentary voice in Torma and Marion? I would certainly be one of the voiceovers going, I have no idea what I'm saying. Because I have no idea how to play Doma Mayong. Because I didn't read all of the creature motif tooltips, I just assumed the ones that give you Madine deal more damage. They don't. But Madine does more damage. Right, so what was it? This one you just use Resolution, just go Lamau? I'll use a defense here, just to be sure. One of these. Whoops. I cast Laser Beam! Blam! Blam! There! Wow, that is a lot of damage. I'm a firing my laser! I do realize I can slide cast it, but I feel like he's consistently timing the cast really inconveniently for me. So guys, we just repeat the same bosses for each 10 floors, right? Yes. That resolution thingy with the Kuribo that we give them at like near the end, that is like meant as like a counter for floor 100 specifically. Yeah, it's really good on undeads, right? Yes. Isn't the floor 40 boss undead? Record scratch. Oh yeah. Whoops. I thought Doma Mayong is just normal Mayong. I think it is, Bukash, but it's Final Fantasy. But yeah, exactly, Liv. That is something they could do. But the most funny thing is that with so many jobs not really caring about skill speed, it's almost like for I think for Warrior and Paladin, especially just among the tanks, and basically all ranged physical jobs, just for starters, putting skill speed on gear is like putting landmines in your gearing process. Because it's like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. Because that, like, it doesn't help them very much. I wonder why the Gilmorans decided to take this place out. Good question. Because I dislike that skill speed actually messes up some rotations. Yeah. And there's also the part that because we're so focused on using everything on cooldown, having skill speed or spell speed combined with, you know, animation locking and all that causes problems. Like, hilariously, and of course, right, here's your checkmark. Can't have a stream without talking about World of Warcraft. But when they started having gear with haste on it more and more in World of Warcraft, the reason why it didn't matter is because OGCDs could just be used. Like, the only exception was like mages, casters, couldn't weave something while they were actively casting. But you, like, it took a single frame to use every OGCD in your arsenal because it doesn't have animation lock. So ultimately, the biggest weakness of skill speed and spell speed in Final Fantasy XIV, I think, is the animation lock. If it didn't have that weird animation lock, then it wouldn't matter very much. In fact, if it didn't have that animation lock, then it would be feasible to just weave something on a single frame after a cast and then just continue casting. It wouldn't matter that you clip the GCD because it is one frame. Of course, it would be better if you didn't do it there, but you get what I mean. So, like, that is the weird thing. And, you know, the biggest problem there is that, logically, because it's a technical limitation in some capacity that is added in the game, skill speed and spell speed doesn't make the animation lock shorter. It doesn't make it shorter. But if it did, then the problem would at least be smaller. One last set. And one Stormblood Warriors couldn't use Fell Cleave away from a bingo. If they had reverse skill speed, slow your JCD, but buffs potency, would it be more popular, I wonder? If it was strong enough, probably. If it was strong enough, probably. Hey, Mokius, it's been a while. I hope you're doing well. It has been a while. Because the reason why such a stat that BMO's suggesting could be viable is mainly because there's so much burst in some jobs that, like, think about it for a second. If Paladin's GCD was 3 seconds, they would just have less filler in their burst. Otherwise, they, like, the rest, they don't actually care. Like, they would just push out the, like, the atone, like, the supplication and the Holy Spirit. But if it made their blades do more damage, worth it, man. Same thing with Pictomancer. Oh man, my, like, well, maybe not, because their burst is rather tight already, but if the buttons that actually do the big damage did even bigger damage, then they would absolutely take it. No questions asked. I'm sure you can get back into the swing of things, Emokius. One step at a time. Dots not scaling with spell speed is so weird. Dots do scale with spell speed. Just not in the way you'd think. Damage over time and healing over time effects scale with speed. It makes them do more. As in, dots do more damage, hots do more healing. Yeah, that could also be an option, Liv, that people would just slow down more. Yeah, because I actually have a Mythbuster video from late Endwalker where it demonstrates that Gunbreaker hots scale with spell speed. Notably, Aurora being a heal and Heart of Corundum being a quote-unquote heal over time effect. It heals once, but it's a heal over time effect, means that it scales with speed, and it turns out that all ability-based healing over time scales with spell speed. Also, yeah, note, don't put spell speed on Gunbreaker. But yeah, all healing over time abilities, thank you, Ardell, scale with spell speed. All physical damage abilities that do damage over time scale with skill speed, and all magical damage over time effects that are ability based with the damage over time effect scale with spell speed. Which means that Circle of Scorn, the paladin one, scales with skill speed. And presumably, Dodson is an ability, isn't it? So it would scale with spell speed. I think. I'm not always sure about the placed AoEs. Random says, I had a conversation with someone recently who put a lot of skill speed onto their bard because of the dodge scaling. Yeah, I was about to say exactly the same thing, Brontom. That's a really, really small amount of your damage. Are you sure this is a good idea? Oh boy. Look, it's a Manticore. Time to be the skill speed ninja where Dotton is finally a gain on 1. No, Necrophits. It has to be spell speed. Because Dotton does magic damage. Important. How? That's the really dumb part. Is that because it is magic damage, it has to be spell speed. Oh boy. You do hear me perfectly. That's good, at least. It's very annoying. And very distracting, as you can probably tell. But yeah, that was a lag spike. Thank you for letting me know. Now I know at least. But I'm glad to hear that it's... If it's just the sound... If it's just the gameplay, but the voiceover is fine, that is relevant. Because then I don't have to repeat myself if I keep lagging out in the middle of saying something. Why is it always Tuesdays? You know what, Liv? Speaking of Black Mage and spell speed, I think Black Mage is also slowly moving towards, like... I don't know how much Flare Star changed that. But, it probably... Yannick says, by the way, if you DC, there's a way to have a chance to save your run. It's fine, Yannick. The thing is, this has happened before. We had the extreme countdown on Sephiroth, like 2 weeks ago, where this happened. The game is not lagging. The game is not lagging at all. Just randomly OBS just, like, drops to mega lag, and then you get a lag spike. Like, frame drops and all that. But the game is not lagging. Which is what makes it even weirder. What is the way to save it if you disconnect, by the way? Like, while we're on the subject anyway? Isn't Slow Mage better than Dawn Trail? You see, I'm not sure. The thing is, the more spell speed you have, the easier the base rotation. You freeze your character for 24 hours. I mean, that is a solution if you don't need your character for anything else. But I have heard about that. That is really weird, by the way. But yeah, the more spell speed you have, the easier it is to like perform the base rotation. However, if you're trying to do anything non-standard, which, granted, less common these days, then spell speed is often in the way. And the thing is, and this is actually also what's happening with other jobs, the reason why speed, quote-unquote, sucks, right? The reason why speed sucks for so many jobs, and it didn't suck nearly as much, like, in Stormblood or Shadowbringers for that matter, is because basically, Vivi says I might sound dumb by asking, but what is freezing your character? I think what Yannick means is, if you disconnect, don't log in. Like, don't log back in. Just stay away from the game for 24 hours. Like, note the time and stay away for 24 hours. After 24 hours, it will basically kick you out of the, like, kick your character out of the instance without losing you the run. But it also means you can't play the character for 24 hours, so, you know. But the key problem, as I was getting at here, is, in Shadowbringers, a lot of jobs, what they got at level 80 for their big capstone thing, or for some of them a little bit earlier, what you got when you leveled up in Shadowbringers was a big new attack move, like a big mega nuke of some sort. That was it. That was what you were given. One big mega button. That was all. I was really hoping. Why did that have such a long cast time when the bias just instantly paralyzes for 30 seconds? And yeah, I do believe you can play your ults. You just have to stay away from that particular character. But the problem is exactly that. If every job is given a big mega button that they can use once every 2 minutes, how does that interact with speed? If you said it doesn't, then you're right, and that's the problem. That's why speed sucks. That is the reason. And in Endwalker, most jobs got an even bigger button. And in Dawntrail, some jobs got somehow an even bigger button. So by getting this bigger button, every time they add like another big button to the stack, that button doesn't scale with spells, with skill or spell speed. Other things you have might, but all of those once every minute or every 2 minute things do not care about your speed, but they do care about when you crit them. And that of course also has the effect of making crit better and better and better for each expansion. And Determination Direct Hit for that matter, because they would like they're just good. Like they're always kinda nice. But fundamentally, speed will suck for any job that doesn't like have a majority of their damage in their like GCD base filler rotation, so to speak. What if speed reduced the cooldown of everything? Then your burst would drift out of burst windows. I think this is a Serenity moment. then your burst, like your 2-minute burst, would just drift out of burst windows. So it would probably have the effect that that you would need to aim for a super specific speed amount, where like a specific fight, for example, happens to favor a very, very specific burst timing. And that's when you burst. And yeah, absolutely, Hieronymus. That is actually also part of the reason why it might feel like a lot of jobs didn't get very much. Like, as I said, Summoner got a big new, stronger Fester. Doesn't change anything. And then they got some potency increases, some of which bugged out and doesn't actually work. Doesn't change your rotation. You get Swift Cast a little bit faster, but that doesn't really change your rotation. And you get Searing Flash once every 2 minutes. That technically changes your rotation very slightly, because you're going to use that OGCD once every 2 minutes. And then Idle upgraded. And then Bahamut got stronger. Oh right, that was a silver. Oops. But that ultimately means that Summoner got a bunch of things, but what it really boils down to is you do more damage and you have 1 OGCD more in your arsenal. That's it. That's all. That's all you got. Everything, you got 1 more OGCD. Warriors, for example, gets 1 new OGCD per inner release. That's every minute. And they get 1 new GCD at level 100 with Primal Ruination every minute. So they got 2 things per minute, or 4 things per 2 minutes. I could go on and on, but that's kind of the problem. Uh-oh. I need all 3 near me so I can do this. Missed 1. It's not what I wanted. I think I'm attacking the wrong thing there. I died on a trap. Well, no more racing. That's really, really awkward. The worst part is that if I had aimed my smudge a little bit better, I don't think I would have dashed into the boot. Yeah, Vivi, that is actually a really funny thing. Because people see Seraphism, and at a glance, Seraphism sounds and looks stronger than Philosophia. You know, the Sage option. Bruh. But in reality, if you just click the button and then just continue your rotation like it's nothing, then Philosophia heals for more. And the power boost that Philosophia gives you is basically the same as the upgraded skills that the Seraphism gives you. They're basically identical. The only difference is that Scholar's version makes them instant, and the Sage version is like, well, it was already instant. So they're just like, there, we don't need that part. Which means that if you just click the button for the healing, like the pulsing healing value, then Sage actually got the better button. It just doesn't look better because it doesn't make you turn into like a super angel mode or something. But genuinely, the active part, Philippe, is the same. Seraphism gives you new buttons that are 20% stronger than the regular buttons. They're also instant. Philosophia gives you a 20% healing magic boost. That's the same. The only thing Seraphism gives that Philosophia does not have and cannot compete with is Seraphism makes emergency tactics have a 1-second cooldown. So if you actually need the raw healing power of Seraphism, then emergency tactics spam, I guess, is a thing you can do. But then also remember that Philosophia heals for more in total, like just baseline, so maybe they're even Steven anyway. Haven't like looked into the numbers deeply enough on that. I wonder what a super angel mode visual equivalent for Sage would look like. I don't know, based on the dance moves that you do for Philosophia, I imagine it would be like a disco ball over you. Why do we want more things on classes every expansion? Because, essentially because it looks, it's boring if you don't get anything. Interestingly, and here we go again, World of Warcraft had this problem. About, like, around Warlords of Draenor, they concluded that classes have too many things. So that's when they started on the thing known as borrowed power. Some of you may have heard about this. Essentially, every expansion, they give you a few new things. But because it's, like, granted to you by, like, an artifact or an item of some sort, when the next expansion comes around, they just take it back. Just yoink, now you don't have it anymore. Now we can give you a different thing. And if something really good, really awesome comes from it, they can, you know, put it into the toolkit, make it a talent or something so you can have it again. And they've done that multiple times. But because they reached a breaking point where they had so many things that there wasn't really space to add more, they just stopped adding things. And Final Fantasy XIV has probably already reached that point. That is also the reason why in Endwalker and Shadowbringers, they added a snazzy new cool button for your big damage button. In Dawntrail, in nearly all cases, the cool new thing you got was just, when you use this button you already have, it turns into this other button. Didn't WoW also have a level squish at some point? Yes, they did. With Shadowlands. But yeah, they had the problem too. And in Final Fantasy XIV, we can basically see that we've reached this breaking point because in Dawntrail, most jobs they basically got a token new ability. And it's extra funny with some of them. Like, Red Mage got 3 new moves, yet somehow 0 new buttons. because they just made existing buttons turn into them. Warrior also got 2 new moves, but 0 new buttons. Didn't WoW make you start again from level 1 for some expansions? With the level squish of Shadowlands, they basically adjusted all the different levels players were at so that they matched in with this new system. But ultimately, yeah, in a way, I guess. Feels like every job just got blue mage buttons. And yeah, exactly, Kat. That is also, by the way, this is actually something that was really, really funny that I ran into a few times. Some of you might have seen my my stats series, where like I talked about like how strong or how weak the various stats were, like a little bit like the is tenacity still terrible video that I released recently. Yeah, a little bit like that. Hilariously, a lot of people went on those videos and went, well, I mean, in the next expansion, when our stats go even higher, it'll be crazy. And then I had to remind them that, well, actually, you know how when you're doing Sastasha, you actually get a lot of power out of 1 point of crit? Yeah, incidentally, that point of crit is not worth a lot when you're level 90. Similarly, when you're level 100, it's not going to be worth a lot. Like, basically, some players forgot that the stat, like, level scaling and stuff is a thing. In their pursuit of trying to justify that a stat wasn't as bad as it looked. And part of the reason, or one of the big downsides of this kind of scaling is, of course, that it means that every time a new expansion starts, if stats were more impactful, then it would suck every time a new expansion starts. Like, imagine if it was realistically feasible to have a GCD of I don't know, 1.5? Like, if you just stacked speed enough, you could reach a GCD of 1.5. As any job. That'd be really fun. New expansion arrives. Now you can't. Because of, you know, scaling. But that is also justification in the opposite direction for why it is not that bad that stats are relatively unimpactful when it really comes to it. Does stat scaling work per level or per 10 levels? Per level. There are various sites that you can use to check how much stats are worth at different levels. Not a big fan of that guy. Don't want to fight him in the gloom. But I also don't really want to fight the dragons, to be perfectly honest. Maybe if I also had my damage and my buffs here. Defense scales as well. Basically everything, as far as I know, scales. General GCD of 1.5 is not fun. It's almost unplayable on most jobs because you can't double weave anymore. Well, you can single weave, and you'd have a lot more weaving spaces. There's also the part that having a GCD of 1.5 wouldn't actually do anything for a lot of jobs. It would just be like, wow, I have like a dragoon. Oh man, I can do a lot of these 5-step combos before my burst comes up. Oh boy. How wonderful, how joyous. 1.5 GCD would be fun on classes that build bar. Oh yeah. Reaper enshrouding like 4 or 5 times. For 2 minutes? That would be pretty funny. .5 Gunbreaker? How many GCDs could you fit in a 2-minute burst if you had a GCD of 1.5? The Pictomancer would actually be one of those jobs where you could go even further beyond, because you would have some GCDs that you like have a long, like some attack with an even longer base GCD that then would allow you to, you know, stack even more speed, and it would still work. And by the way, for anyone out of the loop here, if you actually could reach 1.5 GCD, like actually reach that, that is the bottom. Like that is as low as the GCD will go. So if you could actually reach that point, that would also be the point where skill speed and spell speed would stop working. They're using a monk attack animation? But it would be really funny, and it's also kind of the idea that I think some other MMOs go with is stats are really fun. A lot of stats is a lot of fun. Whereas with Final Fantasy XIV, it's sort of like, well, I mean, they try to focus a lot on making sure that the jobs work in a rather specific way. And by making sure that stats are kind of muted and don't really do very much, most jobs, like most instances of a given job will work the same way. Makes it easier to balance. Like on top of everything else. How do we know there's a minimum if it's not possible to reach? You can reach it in Boja. Hey, Mia. Hope you're doing well. You can reach it in Boja. That's how we know. Hey, Zelly. Hope you're doing well. It basically, that speed is reachable in certain unusual content. I can also inform you that there is a, I believe it's the level 100 role quest for ranged physical jobs. At some point in the fight, you get a buff that basically maxes out your speed stat, like completely, for some reason. And yeah, I can inform you as a machinist, it's really weird. Do you use Blazing Shot then? Because that one doesn't go any faster. Like genuinely, it will not go a single smidge faster than your regular GCTs. Oh, don't we love the parks? That buff does nothing, says the machinist player. Yeah, thanks. I specifically remember that so vividly because I got the buff in the middle of a hypercharge window. So I was like, nothing happened. And then I went over to like use drill, and then I saw that the cooldown on air anchor and chainsaw was just going. But drill was going slow because it has 2 charges, remember? Hey Chris, I don't actually know. We're kind of like, we're out of racings, and I would like to have more steals and strength, but I don't. So actually, I would estimate that we're not winning. We've also been incredibly close to actually dying and wiping out a few times. Exactly, Ham. They give it to the ranged physical jobs, where they've succeeded in making sure that none of the ranged physical jobs actually won it. Quite ironic, that. Imagine you would do to still getting your checkmates and double checks. Possibly, yeah. But admittedly, Blazing Shot, I'm pretty sure is like kinda mid potency if you, like if it didn't have the faster GCD. Items unavailable. That's not a fun one to end on. Imagine having healing to use without it being a potion. Splat. It is weird to scale Blazing Shot, as others mentioned, Necrophytes, because Blazing Shot reduces the cooldown of both of your checks. I'm pretty sure the checks have a 160 potency, so essentially because it cuts the cooldown of both of them by 15 seconds, combined, you can add one check to the potency of Blazing Shot, just flat, and it's not entirely inaccurate. Which means that it is sort of like a 400 potency on a 1.5 second GCD. So the question is that better than your 1-2-3 combo on a 1.5 second GCD? For example. As above the average. Well, there we go. So it would be worth it. Although it might actually be difficult to find space to use the hypercharges, because air anchor and chainsaws GCD would be... Yeah, I don't even know if how low they can go, or rather, not their GCD, their cooldown. Like, I don't know how low they can go, or they stop at whatever the normal GCD bottom is. So they'd still be, 16 and 24 regular GCDs of cooldown. I'm not sure. Is it worth it if we consider the battery gauge? That's a good question. I'm wondering if I should set up a little something here. Could probably set even more up. Never mind, we'll just leave. things are going decently, Emir, but I don't think we're winning. That is really funny. If you paid really close attention, you might have noticed that the arrow in green did like twice the damage of water and blue and fire and red because the zombies are weak to wind for some random reason. One of the most random facts of this. That's worrying. Wait, are you not supposed to cast something when you do that? Thank you. That is what I was expecting. Can blue run Palace of the Dead? Nope. What song is this? This is the boss theme for Heavensward, I believe? Was maybe mega wasteful there, but whatever. That is interesting, Vulbis, but I will tell you, they're consistent about this. This particular thing, they're always consistent about. Summoners Emerald Rites and Emerald Ruins also do wind damage properly. So they also work when it matters. Isn't this just Hawk Manor Heart's final boss reused? In a way, yes, a little bit. Oh yeah, there was also Hooton, which did fire damage right at the start of Dawn Trail for some reason. Allegedly, anyway. The tooltip said fire damage. I don't actually know if it actually did fire damage, but it said so. How about if I kill you? You summon another ad? How about if I kill you? Yeah, Jason, it set fire. It straight up set fire damage at first, and then they fixed it. It's really funny. It's so random. I don't even know why that would happen, but my best guess is that they just, like, maybe whoever the developer that did that just copied Katon. Because, I mean, Huton does damage centered on the target. So it's basically, yeah, Ymir said the same thing. They probably just copied Katon and then changed the potency. But they forgot something. And yeah, that's the thing, Sally. I think it would be pretty hard to test. Are you happy with your Pictomancer collection for 150? No. 0 raising? Not happy with that. One of these? Nope. Very not happy with that. Oh, hi. I have a feeling that we might lose on the next set. But that will have to be next time. Because because I like to round up the streams with a little bit of not intense gameplay. But also because if it actually ended up taking an hour, then I wouldn't be able to finish without being late to some raid stuff. But good to hear that the next set is chill by comparison. It's time for Not Palace. Do some treasure maps then. No. We're just going to hang out a bit. But yeah, Sally, in regards to the Huton thing, whether it actually did fire damage or not is something that is really hard to test, I think. One way to check it is, of course, that sometimes people can see it with tools. Other times, the only way you can check it is by finding something where the damage type actually matters. That makes sense? Like, the zombies here, you could test it with. But that would require that someone went into Palace of the Dead as a ninja, got to that floor, used Huton on those mobs. Eureka, not quite. They actually work a little bit outside of that system, I believe. Like, they don't actually care what element your attack is. They care about what element you're attuned to, or something like that. And yeah, it's probably more effort than it's worth. Like, doing that would amount to a funny anecdote. And the saddest part is that even if someone went and checked it, in a few years, what would happen is that if you shared that anecdote and went, yeah, by the way, it was pretty funny, Huton actually said it did fire damage on the tooltip, but I actually went and tested and it still does wind damage, or it did. So it's just a tooltip that was wrong. People would just go, your word against mine. And then, like, maybe you could find a video where they actually demonstrated it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. I guess. Like, it doesn't really matter. They fixed it. It was a clear bug. We would probably have known if the patch note said something like, oh yeah, the functionality is unchanged. It's just a tooltip. I'm excited for the next Unreal. It looks cool. Pretty funny that. I remember back when I got into Final Fantasy XIV that that Byakko was something that I noticed existed in the game. Notably because I'm pretty sure that Byakko was implemented in the game alongside the duty recorder. Or either that, or I discovered that the duty recorder existed at that time. You know, the immensely helpful, well-known duty recorder that everyone loves, right, guys? But yeah, my point being that Byakko was like, I think one of the first releases that I saw in Final Fantasy XIV where like I was there to see it happen. They haven't mentioned Hooton at all. Huh. They just quietly changed it, maybe? Is the next set the last set raising strop, or is it the 170 floors? I don't actually know. See, that's the thing, Wulpes, is that some of you might be looking at me doing this set and going, you're making a lot of mistakes. But genuinely, I read a guide a long time ago, but so far I haven't actually looked up anything since. It's all just from memory, which is why I'm like, oh yeah, there's a boss where the adds are weak to wind, right? And then I'm told by you, oh yeah, floor 150. And then I see the boss, and I'm like, oh yeah, this does look familiar. And then I see the 4 zombies spawn and go, oh yeah, this does look familiar. It does look familiar. And that's like where it starts and where it ends. I also know, like from memory, that oh, the guys with the tombstones on their arms are a little scary, so I instinctively avoid them. I also know that answers are really scary, so I would instinctively avoid those. But that's just like impressions that I've gotten that like I remember vividly. So I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't remember probably. What's duty recorder? It's a very, very awkward tool. The way it works is that you enable it, and then when you do specific duties, and there's like 3, and they're typically always outdated, you can record them, and then you can review the footage in-game. But that's it. Like, basically the duty recorder is kinda pointless. Exactly, Zelly. The problem with it is that it is never allowed for current content. That is the biggest weakness. If it at least worked for the current rate tier and the current extremes and things like that, then it would be useful. It doesn't make sense that you can only record things in current content. Like, I don't think there's any specific reason. But it would be more helpful if you could use it in current content. You can't. But that would have made it useful. It would have been better if it worked in all content. It works for the current extremes right now, I think? Really? Well, that's nice, at least. Yannick says like 99.9% of players won't know that 41 to 50 doesn't drop alterations at all. That is a really random fun fact. And yeah, indeed, for the majority of players, that is like whatever, because either you can see by mousing over. Oh, right. Right. For Leia, the current extremes and I guess the most recent alliance raid? Why? Oh man. Okay. But yeah, the alteration thing, I think I wouldn't have noticed ever, Yannick, because due to the way that I play Palace of the Dead, because I'm like not like a score runner, I guess, I would rarely use alteration at those floors unless I had 3 and found a 4th. And yes, that is correct, Perrin. That is the weirdest part about Duty Recorder, is that the fact that there exists tools that enable you to use the Duty Recorder wherever tells me that there's a very high chance that it's like, it is there, it's just that they decided to put a limiter on it. For reasons. Like, it can do everything. They've just decided that it can only be enabled on these specific occasions. Which is really silly. Incredibly silly. Yeah, classic Final Fantasy IV. Yeah, exactly. By the way, this is also the reason why some of you might have heard about I think it's called the Raid Planner. Alright, Emir, enjoy your evening. The Raid Planner that people have been talking about, they're still excited for when it comes. And some people are kind of sarcastically going, yeah, sure it'll work. Is because it would, like, if the duty, like, if the Raid Planner, whatever they're gonna call it, actually comes out and it only works for, like, M1S. Or only the most recent extremes, then it would be disappointing, but it wouldn't surprise anyone. Like, it would be perfectly in character. Ah, yes, here comes the amazing tool that people actually think would be awesome. Except there's this small little caveat that makes it useless. We've made the fastest car on the planet. It drives faster than all cars. Except that we've limited it so it only goes like 30. It can't go above, and there's nothing you can do to fix it. Raid Planner comes out and it only works for P8N. And it's quite incredible how that happens, Sally. Just randomly. But that's the funny thing, is that when the Duty Recorder came out, I'm pretty sure it came out alongside the Byakko fight. So it was, of course, you know, shown with the Byakko fight in mind, like the extreme one, I'm pretty sure. We made the fastest car, it can't go downhill. What happens? Does it just float? Learn! We have a problem. The further away you get it from the center of the planet, it just never comes down again. It can't go downhill. Why? No reason. We just decided not to. Yeah. I would guess that the logical explanation with the Duty Recorder is something with, like, data or something. Like, storage or whatever. But, isn't there a limitation of 8 recordings? Like, isn't this supposed to do that? Just a little weird. Just a little weird. Yeah, the only way that limiting it to this reduces data problems is that they made it so specific that no one wants to use it anyway. Fastest car, but only driving 15 degrees around magnetic north. Ronsom says, the people I know most excited for it are the ones I know who never follow the established plan anyway. That is pretty funny. Oh man, then we can like make plans in-game? Yeah. So, will you follow the plan? Well... Least used feature, Duty Recorder of Vermilion. Vermilion? Do you mean Lord of Vermilion? I mean, that's easy because there are actually people playing Lord of Vermilion. Also that, Aradil says, when a new patch is released, any previously saved recordings will no longer be playable. I can see a reasoning for that. Because I'm pretty sure that the way the recording works is that it doesn't, like, record the actual footage. That's the reason why you can turn your camera while watching the duty recorder replay. It records where people were and what they were doing at any given time. But if a new patch changes the potency of something, then it would need to then it would need to also take note of exactly how much damage that did. And imagine if a patch, I don't know, changed the functionality of an action. Then they would need to take care to note that, it actually doesn't matter what the action was. What matters is what, what damage it did. So if a new patch comes out, it could make the recording basically break. Because now things don't make sense anymore. But it would have to record how much damage each action did anyway, because it's a replay, right? And things could happen vastly differently depending on how much damage things did. But exactly, if they removed an action or something, or changed the functionality of an action, it could break some things, I guess. I don't know if it would, but that is a reasoning why they might do that. A reasoning. A good one, but one nonetheless. What do we have? Oh wow, hair. Shoes. Money. And a jacket. That is actually pretty hype. But I think I used that. I used this one for my maiming set. Hair, shoes, money. What else do you need, right, Sally? Like that one change to Homgang making Hall of the Novice impossible? What? Oh. For some reason my brain was like... What? In Age of Empires? A cup of tea! Indeed, that would be something you could use. And shoes. And friends and fun would also help, yes. You could buy the fun with the money. Oh, exactly. That does make sense, Astris, and that's true. That's true. And that is indeed the thing. And sometimes it is worth noting that sometimes when they change an action, it actually changes it for mobs as well. There's a buff that the archers around this area actually, I believe, uses, like the enemies. They use a buff that used to be a thing that Archer learned. That, I believe it increased hit chance, and then in Heavensward they reworked it to increase their dexterity, and then in Stormblood they removed it. The mobs here still get a dexterity boost from it. And similarly, some of them use Wind Bite and some of them use Venomous Bite, and they last 45 seconds, which is relevant because the dots didn't always last 45 seconds. They used to last less time than that. But when they were changed, the mobs version also got changed. And I'm pretty sure that also applies to, like, the archers in Stinging Back. They also apply a 45-second dot. Things like that. In Hall of the Novice, some guy tethered you with Holmgang for 8 seconds, and then the AoE fires at 10 seconds. When Holmgang was made 10 seconds, it was impossible to complete until patched. Indeed. And that is pretty funny, though. At least they patched it. Each time a mob or ally NPC uses Touch of Death. The strangest ones is like... in Tower of Zot, which is an Endwalker thing, by the way. I'm not sure which one does it. I'm guessing maybe Graha, if like when he's among the like extra NPCs, not as trust. But one of the Scions will cast Arrow 3, I'm pretty sure. Which hasn't existed since Shadowbringers. So why do the NPCs still have it? Why do the NPCs still use Stone Skin in new content? Where the excuse isn't, well, when this content was made, Stone Skin was a thing. Like, it isn't anymore, it hasn't been for years, why are they still adding it? Neo-talented guy who wastes too much time on AR here. Yes, the guild has archers and other archer-based NPCs or ads have 45-second dots. Yeah, exactly. I think it was just assigned for fun. Probably. It is probably just a case of a callback, but it does have this weird sense of... but why? In Caetsu they use true Stone Skin. That's also true. And I believe... Tankamet uses Living Dead as a hallowed ground. Yeah, 50 floors in 3 hours I think is pretty good. Now, my expectation for the next next stream of this is we might fail in the first set of 10 floors. Simply because I don't have that many racings on account of I having 0, and I also don't have any. I have 1 steel and 1 strength left. I have a lot of other outs, or some at least, but I feel like we could easily just get dumpstered by an unlucky set of traps, and that's it. Now the question is whether I'd just go in as Pictomancer again, or if we switch to Viper if that happens, just to try something else. You might be saying, isn't that an incredibly inefficient way to get to 200? Yes, it is, but it is more entertaining. And then, eventually, I'll have gone through it enough that I'll actually understand how to get to floor 200 without dying. Hopefully. Alice also does not use Magic Barrier, but can apply a damage down to enemies. Weird. Astrid says, I'm curious, if we are in the US data centers, would it be impossible for us to run duties with you? Not impossible, but you can't actually reach me on EU. We would both have to go to OCE. That is actually the reason why whenever I do the walk and talk streams, which I do like every second Thursday or so, I do it on Ravana Materia over on OCE because all data centers can visit Materia. At least for now. Which means that you can join me there. The reason why I don't do real content over on OZE is because I have a latency of 300 ms when I'm on Materia, which means that I can't double weave. I can't play most jobs remotely efficiently because I'm used to a much faster latency, or much better latency. And I would probably get hit by a lot of things, which means that it would not be very fun to do any meaningfully hard content at all. So that's why I usually just do something like non-combat when we are on OCE. Weaving on OCE, good joke. I mean, I can single weave. Yeah, that is unfortunately how it is, Astris, that EU and NA can't visit each other directly, at least not yet. Everyone get onto OZ to play normal content, Savage. Yeah. Right. With that, if you enjoyed this particular stream, it helps me a lot if you leave a like on it here on YouTube. That tells the YouTube algorithm that it was an enjoyable stream. You'd like other people to enjoy it as well, so thank you so much for the support. And if you'd like to be part of the community on Discord, there is a Discord community server that you can join where you'll find the weekly schedule. You'll also find announcements with links to streams and videos when they come out. And if you go to the role assignments room and grab the reminder roll, you'll get a notification when I do post a video or a stream, as well as an extra notification around 15 minutes before stream starts, so you can catch it right when we go live. And if you'd like to support the channel even more directly, you can become a member, you can gift memberships, you can use the super chat stuff, and if you don't want any of that, there's also a Ko-fi link in the description. It all supports me and the channel directly, so I can focus on doing stuff like this to entertain all of you. Have fun together, talk about all these weird random things. It's very fun. But I think that'll be that. I've plans with, as you may have seen on the schedule, we do the Savage stream on Friday, and we start a little later. So to make sure that we maybe get a little bit more proc time on M4S, we'll try to do some of the re-clears off stream, and that's what's happening a little later, which is why we have to stop a little strict. And I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Astris, and everyone else. So I think that'll be where we wrap up. So good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye.